It's a new day. You know what that means. James Gunn has cast another character in the new DCU Superman Legacy. And I assume this character will also be in other things. I have to assume. Well, maybe not Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, because that's probably going to be set largely in space. And I'm sure this character spent, a fair amount of time in space, but that's not what he's known for. Anyway, talk about Jimmy Olsen. James, the cub reporter for the Daily Planet, Superman's best friend, is going to be in Superman Legacy. We knew that at least James Gunn planned to cast all of the classic Superman characters, whether or not they play a big role in the movie. Like, part of the goal seemed to be James just wanting to set up a Superman universe built out with all the characters you would expect. So this isn't going to be like, 3 movies in, we'll finally get Jimmy, or 4 movies in, we'll finally meet Lois. Like, I mean, that would be wild if they did that. But Jimmy Olsen is going to be in these movies along with all the other characters we would expect. Anyway, they cast a Jimmy Olsen, and it is someone who is really, really phenomenal for this role. It's an actor named Skyler Gisondo. Now, we've talked about Skyler a couple of times so far, and I've had a hard time remembering that guy's name. I don't think I'm going to anymore. Like, I think after I make this video, I'm definitely going to remember it. And it's not that I don't like this actor either. I've been a big fan of his for a while. I watched Santa Clarita Diet, where he played the next door neighbor. I watched Booksmart, where he played that really dorky classmate. And I watched The Righteous Gemstones, where he played, I want to say, the estranged son, who comes back into the picture when this series starts. So I've seen Skyler Gisondo in a fair amount of things. And right off the bat, I'm pretty sure this one's confirmed. As opposed to a couple of others where it's been mostly confirmed, but there hasn't been an official announcement from like DC to back it up. So right off the bat, like, Skyler Gisondo had been coming up in a lot of these conversations as someone that was rumored to have this role for a while. It makes sense why they would want to announce like Superman, Lois, and Lex before they start getting into the supporting cast. Although they did do, like Metamorpho and Mr. Terrific and stuff. But like Jimmy Olsen, it'd be weird if you led with that casting as opposed to someone like Lex Luthor. But he is an important character, and I do think it's really, this is something that the Zack Snyder movies never quite got right, was Superman's relationship with humans outside of superheroes and Lois Lane and like people that are relatives of his. There were just very few common people in his life that he could relate to. And I made a video about this. Jimmy Olsen plays a very specific role in Superman's world. He is the force that grounds him. He is optimistic. He can raise Superman's spirits. He's someone to get in trouble that's not just Lois Lane. So every single movie doesn't have to have Lois Lane getting kidnapped or whatever. There's a lot of reasons why a good Jimmy is important. Right off the bat, Skyler Gisondo just looks perfect. He looks exactly like Jimmy Olsen. He has the face, which isn't like a very specific face, right? Like, he doesn't have a humongous jawline, but it's not like to say that he's not like a handsome man or anything like that. Just, he doesn't also look like Superman. We don't have a world where everybody looks like Superman. He looks like a regular person. So there's 2 things I love about Skyler Gisondo that make him a great Jimmy. One, he's relatable. He plays an everyman, and like, not necessarily a straight man in the sense that, like, in Righteous Gemstone, I would say he is supposed to be the most normal, like, well-adjusted member of this mega church family. But I would say, like, in Santa Clarita Diet, he's not necessarily supposed to be well-adjusted. He's very, nervous a lot of the time. But at the same time, everything that's going on in his neighbor's house, the one that is Drew Barrymore's family, like, that is the crazy thing. And he's the one who's on the outside who's supposed to kind of be like, what is that? Like, you're a zombie. That's weird. So I think Jimmy as an audience surrogate is very important. Jimmy's supposed to be us. He's Superman's best friend. He's this guy that has this close relationship with this superhero that normally people don't know. But like, he does, and we do because we read the books. And I think having Skyler Gisondo in that role, great. The other thing that makes Skyler Gisondo perfect for this role is he's good at playing a dork, a goofball. Jimmy is a lot of things. Sometimes in like the Supergirl show, they play him as kind of a hero, like a cool guy who is not a big nerd, but a lot of the times he's a big nerd, and he's young and a dork, and he thinks he's really cool even though he's really not. That, I'd say, might be one of Jimmy's defining characteristics. He is not only a dork, but he also has enough confidence to go and try to do weird things. That's why like the old Jimmy Olsen comics were so weird, is because like Jimmy would say, like, Superman told me I can't drink this potion, but screw Superman, I'm gonna do it anyway, and then he'd turn into a big monster or something. Like, that's the kind of guy Jimmy is. Jimmy also like dated Supergirl for a while, and like, I want to say like married Lois Lane because he kind of thinks he's a ladies' man even though he's really not, but like, maybe he is if he thinks he is, and all the women in his life do. I guess he is. That reminds me of his character from Booksmart, Jared, who is this ultra confident nerd who, prints the shirt with the picture of him, with the picture of him, with the picture of him on it. There's this big wild party because in his head, that's who he wants to be and that's who he thinks he is. I think Jimmy needs to come in with that energy. I said this on Twitter, but like Jimmy would wear a shirt with a picture of him, with a picture of him, with a picture of him on it, right? And I do think like if in this movie, kind of like in The Boys, where like you'll see a poster in the background for Homelander, people will be wearing Homelander shirts. I do think like Jimmy Olsen will wear a Superman shirt at one point. Jimmy Olsen also always believes in Superman. That's one thing that's really important about him. Like everybody else, maybe everybody on the planet, but definitely like Lex Luthor and some of these other figures are like, Superman's bad. They'll say bad things and Jimmy will go, no, he's not. I believe in Superman. He's a good guy. He's relatable, he's a goofball, and he's earnest. And I think that's why Jimmy is such a likable, fun character. Unlike Superman, who obviously has flaws, but like he is the ideal man. Jimmy is a very flawed, dorky, normal guy who you could see being like your good friend from high school or something who you grew up with. And, you know, I think having a character like that in this movie goes a long way to making this story grounded and human and makes it something that you have to view through the lens of a normal person. That has always been very important in Superman stories. It's been very clear in the last couple of years that that's something that they've been, missing. Although I do think it would be really funny if Skyler Gisondo and this was also a CIA agent that got shot in the beginning of the movie. Like if they cast him, maybe even cut some fake scenes where he's like in the Daily Planet, and then just first scene of the movie, Lois goes and does something, someone shoots Jimmy and they take it as badge and like, that's CIA agent Jimmy Olsen. He's like the James Bond of the CIA. Everyone knows that. I will say one thing for my pick, Jacob Tremblay, who I also think would have been great in this. I was casting for a slightly younger Superman, so I casted a younger Jimmy. Like, I think part of why a couple of my, my Clark, my Lois, and now my Jimmy didn't pan out is because I picked a Clark that was significantly younger than the Clark they chose, and that kind of shifted everyone's age down. So it is what it is. I probably should have had more of a range going forward, and that's what I'll have in the Golden Boostiller, which you could probably watch right now on YouTube and Nebula. But yeah, I do think Jacob Tremblay would have been a great Jimmy Olsen as well. Now, that was not the only bit of casting from today. So in Superman, the movie, Christopher Reeve's 1978, there was a character named Miss Teschmacher. She was created for that movie. I don't believe this character had existed, although I have a feeling some version of this character had existed before, which was a woman who worked with Lex Luthor and was kind of into Lex Luthor, was also kind of into Superman, and she did the bidding of Lex. This character in a different name, but if you remember the Superman Returns movie, you've got Kitty Kowalski, who is kind of doing this. I'm not sure if I cannot remember if Teschmacher dies or whatever, but like the fact that they were so weird about like, oh, this might be the continuity of the Reeves movies, but these ones don't count. Like, I don't know if for that reason this couldn't have been Miss Teschmacher again, but I guess she kind of betrays Lex, but she gets him out of the jail in the helicopter in the second one, so you figure she's still on the payroll. Either way, this character archetype has existed for a while. I would say Miss Teschmacher is not Mercy Graves. Mercy Graves is a different thing. She is Lex's ultra-competent assistant. Miss Teschmacher, while she does work with Lex, she does it almost exclusively on the criminal side of things. So like she goes and robs banks when Lex would rob a bank. Whereas Mercy Graves both works for LexCorp and also, will organize a heist maybe if she wants to. Mercy Graves is also like a trained master of martial arts to some extent, to the extent that like everybody is in these movies, but like she can beat your average person in a fight, whereas Miss Teschmacher can't. Although I hear Miss Teschmacher was on the Supergirl show, and I wonder if kind of like with Jimmy, they did turn her into more of an action hero. I don't know, they probably did. Apparently, this movie is also getting a Miss Teschmacher. Eve, I believe, is this character's name. It's fun to have this character around, too, as someone who can bounce off of Lex when Lex has a bad idea. She butts in and she's like, but Lex, that won't work. And he'll say, like, Miss Teschmacher, you don't understand. And then, she'll have been right. Also, that name is just really fun to say. Say it to yourself a couple of times. Miss Teschmacher, right? Great name. So that character's going to be played by an actor named Sara Sampaio. I looked up her IMDb. I've not seen anything she's done. It seems like she is mostly a Portuguese actress and model who has been in some shows that I have not seen, but like it seems like that's what she's famous for. And I'm curious to see what that means. The fact that Miss Teschmacher is in it is fun because again, I like characters that Lex can bounce off of, and I do think the idea of Mercy Graves, where like everybody in this universe is some sort of hitman or superhero, it gets a little it gets a little much. Whereas I think if you have this character around, I think that's fun. I could also see this character just being, like in this movie, just being arm candy for Lex at some event or something like that. Maybe she is a model that's part of some scheme or something like that. But I could also see this character being a nod to the original Superman movies and not a ton else. Sara Sampaio as Miss Teschmacher, fine. It's good that character is in this movie. And Skyler Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen, about as good as we could hope for. The only other characters that I expect to see eventually are the other Authority members and Perry White. I think we'll probably see one or two, maybe the Doctor, maybe Manchester Black or Jenny Sparks or whatever they end up doing there. And then Perry White, like of course if we have a Jimmy and a Lois, we're getting a Perry. Besides that, I don't know, this might be it. And I'm excited to see where this goes. I think this is going to be a very interesting movie, and I'm looking forward to more of these announcements and from the other shows. Like there's other shows and movies that are coming out that I think we'll get announcements for in the future. So check back on this channel. You got it here, you got it on Nebula. You can watch all these videos, like them, share them, follow me on Twitter, Nando V Movies, and I'll see you around.